All right, welcome to another Monday night here on 520 iXc. It's good to be back. I was not here with the fellas last week, but they held it down. Some of you may have seen that episode, might have had something to say about that conversation, but shout out to my guys, Swiss and Katie, for holding it down. It is Monday, September 30th, 2024, man. It's International Podcast Day, so shout out to all the podcasters, including our guys, Darius and the team with Dino Nuggets. So, yeah, man, loving that. So, we got some people hanging out with us tonight, man. I'm excited for this show, excited for the people that's on with us. If you are watching with us live, I already see people tuning into the chat. Make sure you let us know in the comments that you're here, where you're at. We want to shout you out. We want you to be a part of the conversation. And if you are watching on YouTube and you have not subscribed, make sure you do that, man. We had a bunch of new subscribers this past week. Swiss, it's almost like there was some drama or something last week that sparked some interest, but I won't get into any of that. But yeah, man, subscribe if you haven't, and why not, if you're here, why not check out our Fresh Picks playlist on YouTube and YouTube Music. It's we add new music to that each and every week. Some of our favorites from around Christian hip hop, so make sure you check that out for us. But yeah, man, here we are. Usually I have a dad joke locked and ready, but not this week because I'm slacking. I'm forgetting things because I'm old. So it is what it is. But here we are. Let's get into who we got with us tonight, man. Y'all know me. I'm Eric. Let's see, man. Let's start with we're gonna start with the lady that's joining us. How about we shout out Angela? What's up?
Hello. Yeah, I'm Angela, or Lil Ange, as some people know me, as Chris affectionately called me, and who tonight's show is mostly focused on. Happy to be here.
Love it. Hanging out there in Canada. I mean, America Junior, whatever you want to call it, but it's fine. It's cool.
It's France Junior.
No, we're glad you're here.
We're
glad you're here.
Thanks for inviting me.
Sure. Definitely. And a long time in the works here. We're finally glad that he is on the show. Derek is hanging out with us. What's up, sir?
Hey, how's it going, you guys? Thanks for having me on. I'm glad to be here to celebrate the life of Chris Chicago, especially with Ange, who was in the trenches with Chris for a long time, and I was too. As you know, Chris founded Jam the Hype as a podcast. Interestingly, that it's whatever National Podcast Day or whatever. But yeah, Chris founded jamthehype.com, and I came alongside Chris, and we built it together over the years, over really about 10 years. And this was in the pre-streaming era. People forget. Spotify was not a thing until fall of 2013. And then it took a couple years for it to really, take hold in the full effect to hit. So so anyway, so that's kind of my thing and how I know Chris, and we labored together for many years.
Yeah, man, and let the people know what you're doing now, man, because I know you're into some interesting stuff.
Yeah, so it's been a very interesting ride. I mean, because essentially, I took this is a long story, so I don't know when you want to get into it. But since the pandemic, I've mainly been into tech consulting, and one passion of mine, given my experience in the Christian music industry and just the music industry in general, is music tech. And I worked for Microsoft for a number of years. Effectively, I had 15 years in big tech, 15 years in the music industry, funding artists, promoting artists, trying to function in the dysfunctional Christian music industry. So I've had 30 years, split between these two industries. And what's cool is, like, with music tech, there's just an explosion of stuff happening now. All kinds of new platforms coming online. Artists are tired of the streaming, drip that gives them nothing. And they can't even know who their fans are. So, like, I think as we, and when I say we, I mean like the collective, like, independent artist community, we're all well aware of these problems. It's hard to get traction enough, but then you can't monetize stuff, right? And so now even big artists are having this same problem. and they're like, hey, I want access to my fans. I want to get paid. And I'm tired of Spotify and Apple Music and YouTube and everybody just walking away with all of it, and we get nothing. So that's a passion of mine, and that's kind of what I'm working on now.
Awesome, man.
That's
Love
cool.
it. Love it. And speaking of independent artists, all the way from KD's homeland of Chicago, man, we got Thre hanging out with us. What's good, man?
Yeah, man. How y'all doing? Thre, Chicago native, CHH artist. Glad to be here. Appreciate the invite via KD. And yeah, man, I'm looking forward to. I think I may have met Chris once, right? But I've been extremely blessed by his contribution to the culture, and even benefited from him just platforming my music and spinning it. So yeah, grateful. Look forward to getting into it and even hearing more about some things I didn't know from people who walked alongside him. So yeah,
man, love it, man. I know KD was shutting down at the gig, but he was going to try to make it on before we get up out of here tonight, hopefully. So we might see him stroll through at some point, but it's good to have you here, man. And then of course, my guy Big Swiss.
Big Swiss is here. Good
Big Swiss
day.
is
Good
here.
evening. I'm rocking my new Kingdom and Will Revelation 19 shirt.
I mean,
that's a free promo.
that's all right,
for
dude.
that
It's not as
company.
good as this playoff team right here, though. I'm just saying.
What's a playoff?
That is when you play and other teams are no longer.
This is a Christian podcast. We're not here to talk about baseball.
Shout out to the Kansas City Royals.
I'm just kidding. No, but I'm super excited to get in the conversation tonight. Thanks for everyone for joining tonight.
Yeah, man. And okay. I know I said I wasn't going to say anything about last week, and I'm not exactly. I will say this as we get into our first conversation here, though, is that let's not make huge deals out of things that are not necessarily salvational issues. Okay, let's just leave it at that. All we need to know is Christ died, he rose, he defeated death so that we could live forever. And one man that I know that embodied that was Chris Chicago, right? I wish I could say that I was able to spend as much time as some of the people on this call with Chris, but I am very grateful, and I cherish the opportunity that we did have here at 520 Collective to interact with, truly a legend, right? Like it was crazy, and I'm just gonna say my piece so that I can shut up and let other people talk. But Chris was our guest on our third ever podcast episode, and we were truly nobody. I didn't expect him to say yes. We reached out, we expected to know because who were we? But yet there he was. And not only was he there, and he was an awesome guest, of course, and it was cool getting to talk about early 2000s CHH, Deep Space Five, and the genre or the years of people that I really rock with, right? But what was so cool about it, and what I took away from that interview, was just the amount of encouragement that Chris gave us, even though we were just starting. And talking to him, we were nervous. We were still fumbling through all this stuff, trying to figure out how to even really get started with it. But he was like, man, hey, what y'all are doing is important. We need it. So keep rocking with it. And I mean, it just gave this confidence, right? Of, all right, we can do this. Hey, and shout out to Joshua Sandifer. Royals ain't nothing on St. Well, St. Louis is watching the playoffs at home, buddy. So, I mean, whatever. So, but yeah, no, Chris was, I mean, it was awesome. And it was, even though it was just like an hour of talking to him on the phone, it stuck with me like this entire time. And whenever I woke up and I looked at my timeline and I saw the news of his passing, like it was one of those things where it's like, man, you don't realize how some people's deaths can hit you, even though you're not like super tight with them,
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it was for me. Like it got me thinking about a lot of different things, because I can tell you this, like without Chris Chicago, without DJ Wado, and a handful of others, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing, but let alone CHH and the Christian hip hop representation on radio would be nowhere near where it's at this point without everything, all the hard work that Chris Chicago put in. So I'm definitely, hoping to do whatever we can here at 520 to carry on a little bit of that legacy, and hopefully do that well to honor Chris. But I know, and Ange, I want to start with you because I went and watched your montage video. I was just like, holy cow. Like, first of all, big props because he picked Popeyes over Chick-fil-A. Love it. But like that video was awesome. So so I want to start with you. Like, just
Thank you.
What has the past week been like for you, and what have you been thinking about? What's some of those memories that you've kind of been holding on to during this time?
Yeah, thank you for asking, and thanks for having me on again. I'll say it's been a really hard week. Chris is definitely the closest person I've ever had to me pass away. So I've never known a grief like this. And he was only 44, leaves behind 4 kids. And his wife, Jess, is a friend of mine, a dear friend. Chris was like a big brother to me. So it's been really hard. I'm not going to lie to you and say that it hasn't been really hard. I think something that someone has said, I think it was Larry, who was the APD when I was there at NGen with Chris, the assistant program director. Larry gave the eulogy at his Houston service. So I don't know if you were able to watch that. It's on a live stream. You can watch it now. But he said something along the lines of, you never knew how bad it was with Chris because he would never make it about him. He'd never make it about his cancer and how bad he was feeling. He would always, you'd ask him and you could just tell he, 1, didn't want to talk about it, and 2, would just immediately be like, how are you? Like, let's talk about you and let's make this about you, because that's what he really cared about. He was such an like, you hit the nail on the head. He was one of the most encouraging people I've ever met. And I love that you said his words of encouragement really pushed you forward, because that's the kind of person he was. Extremely compelling, extremely charismatic. He would say something and you would believe it, even if it was the most insane thing you've ever heard. I don't know if I've gotten to share this yet, but oh my gosh, my husband and I joke all the time about, we did a show together for a number of years, for anyone that doesn't know the context. And also for anyone who's joining and doesn't know who Chris is, I just want to give a little, I think we kind of prefaced who he is, but he just amazing. Legend is a very overused term, but he was a legend. He just pioneered Christian hip hop in radio. Had his own show for a very long time, worked with Rabzilla, Jam the Hype, and then worked at NGen in Houston for a number of years and built this incredible radio station there, and then made his own radio station called SoFlo Radio once he left NGen. So that's just kind of the Cliff Notes version of Chris's career, because it's extensive. But I worked with him for a number of years. We had a show together called the Chris Chicago and Lil Ange Show, and had the most fun I've ever had in radio together. And yeah, there's so much I could say, but one of the funny stories I keep coming back to is just how compelling and convincing he was. He really had the power to, I wouldn't say manipulate, but compel people, because he was so convincing. And we got working together. And at one point he told me, you know what, you should really text. This is right as soon as I started working with him, moved to Houston, had gotten out of a relationship the previous year. He's like, you should text your ex. This man convinced me at the time to text my ex-boyfriend. That's how compelling he was. Everyone knows that's a terrible idea.
Always the worst advice.
Always the worst advice. And he was just so compelling and so convincing. I was like, you know what? That sounds like a great idea. So clearly had a God-given gift to bring people in, honestly, and also had a gift to compel them. If Chris told you to do something, you're like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, even if it was the stupidest idea. So, I mean, just there's so much more I could say, but yeah, that's my my last week has been extremely difficult, because imagining a world where Chris is not there to text, not there to talk to, and he's larger than life. So it's impossible to imagine a world where he's not there. So I'm just trying to like keep his presence like with me, just by talking to people like you guys, and completely immersing myself in Christian hip hop. It's just, I know it's what he would have wanted. And yeah, so anyway, I don't feel like he's gone because also, we have probably the biggest digital footprint of him ever. So we can always, what I love so much about it, it doesn't compare to having him here, but at least we can engage with crazy videos like the one I posted. I have so much Chris content, and I'm so glad the world has that, because he's just so funny and the best. So
Yeah, for sure. How long did you guys do the show together? I was trying to think about that the other day.
yeah, it's kind of confusing because the timeline's a bit jagged, as it usually is in radio. I got to the
You wrote
station,
together, and then you guys
then
came back.
apart, and then together, and then apart, and then together again. That's pretty much exactly how it happened. So I'll tell you a fun little story that I know Chris would want me to tell because we joked about it all the time. But I did not like Chris when I first met him. I had just been hearing stuff about him from people that all became his friends. That's the thing about Chris. These people, the same people that said, "Oh, Chris is this, Chris is that," all grew to love him. Everybody grew to love him. And Chris had this one side. I know Derek can probably speak to this since he went to all these conferences with him, but we'd always joke about his side where he'd just be like so swaggy. He'd go into a conference and he'd just walk in like he owned the place. He had this larger than life vibe. And I was like, who is this guy? Like, I was not only hearing, negative stuff, but I was just like, this dude waltzes into his interview. I was already working at the station at NGen at the time. Like, he just like owned the place, the swag, the charisma. And I'm like, I don't know about this guy. He always jokes that I was in my office just doing some work. He comes up and he's like, hi, like in his characteristic, super bubbly personality. And I'm just like, hi. And I get back to work or whatever. And they stuck us together. I was not expecting that, but they put us on the morning show together. And I was like, I'm working with this dude. I'm just going to be a talking head in the background. Like he's Chris, and I hate in radio how so often the woman plays this like little fiddle on the side that just laughs. I hate that. And I told Chris that. I was like, I think I was kind of indignant at first. I was like, I don't want to be this laughing head in the background. It's not who I want to be. I want to be like active. I want to be a part of this. And he really listened to me. He took that seriously, and I never was. I feel like when you hear our show, it's very clear that there has to be on a show somebody that leads the break, somebody that is kind of moving you forward. But he always gave me a chance to shine, and always gave me, not like I wanted the spotlight, but I just wanted to be an equal, and he always gave me that. And it became like to the point where people would defend me to the ends of the earth. If Chris started messing with me, the callers would start calling, hey, like, stop bothering Lil Ange. And yeah, it wasn't very long. I think it probably took me a month to go from hi to this dude is nothing like anybody said he was. He is amazing. He's genuine. It's not an act. Like, any of the things that he puts out there are not an act. They're all sides of him. Like, he is this big, like, larger than life, funny guy, but he also is this swaggy, charismatic guy. That's just a shade of him. And I don't know how long it took for him to be like one of my best friends, and then probably my best friend in the world. But not very long because we just had the best conversations off the air. That's the thing with being in a room with someone for hours and hours and hours like that. Like, you either become really good friends or you kind of start to hate each other. And for Chris and I, it was like, oh, this dude is nothing like anybody said. He's actually like way better. So yeah, that's so to answer your question, we probably worked together on the air together I was there from 2016 to 2020, and I was there the whole time with Chris. So we saw each other every day, interacted. but we did the
Yeah.
show together for probably like 2.5 years, I think I'd say. And then when I moved here to outside of Toronto, when I married my husband's Canadian, Chris asked me again if I wanted to be on SoFlo with him. And we did a SoFlo show together for a number of months before I think it just became too much for him with everything going on with, cancer treatments and other work. So that was really fun to reunite again from a distance. So get the show back together.
Yeah, that's awesome. Derek, I want to ask you some questions, man, because I know that outside of radio, you and Chris work together to build up, one of the kind of flagship platforms for Christian hip hop, man, in the form of Jam the Hype. Talk about that process.
Yeah, so Chris is even more than, the dude. I call him one of the godfathers of Christian hip hop, because really what Chris did from early on was he gave a voice to Christian independent artists in general. And so if you needed promotion, at radio, as just a Christian independent artist, like Chris was kind of the go-to guy. And Chris had gigs with Sony Music. He was promoting the band Red and Natalie Grant, Third Day, and all these different big artists. And so he definitely had the hookups, and he knew all the radio people, etc. And so I had started a record label called Save the City Records back in 2007. And we've been the birthing place of a lot of different artists who have gone on to do big things. So notably, Mr. Talkbox, who was a utility man for Toby Mac, and now he's won 5 Grammys with Bruno Mars. I brought him to market with his solo stuff. Chris promoted him to Christian radio. And we had Alan Stone, who's now, touring the world with Chris Stapleton. We have Jeremy Rosado, who now just got signed to Capitol Records and touring with everybody. But anyway, so I needed a radio promoter. And so I found out about Chris. And I remember back in 2008, I think was probably my first phone call with Chris. And I was like begging him, like, dude, I need you so bad. Like, help me out. And he was like, I don't know if I'm going to help you, and finally we decided to join forces. And then I found out that one of the things he was doing on the side since high school is he had this syndicated radio show. Well, actually it started out as just a podcast that he was distributing just on, iTunes or whatever. And then he worked diligently to get it on different radio stations around the country, late night, different day parts. Ange can talk more about the science of that. But anyway, so he ended up on about 150 radio stations. And so when I found out that he had this, it was called the Hype Radio Show at the time. And originally, well, here's a little side note. It was originally called The Vibe, and Vibe magazine sent him a cease and desist order. So he changed it to the Hype Radio Network. And so he ended up getting on about 150 stations nationwide. And I said, Chris, there's no radio for Christian hip hop other than your day part, on these different stations. It's like, we need to have 24/7 radio. And so actually, while that was happening, while we were having those conversations, Hot 92.7 in Orlando popped up, which is the little sister station, kind of like an engine of I think Joy FM in Orlando. And anyway, so they had started a 24/7 stick in Orlando. But it wasn't really broadcast nationwide. And I said, well, what we should do is let's write an app and let's do a 24/7 stream. And let's start going to events. And live streaming, video live streaming like this was brand new back then, back in 2009, 2010. And so I bought literally $30,000 worth of gear. And we started dragging around the country to different events. Flavor Fest is an annual conference that Pastor Tommy has a Crossover Church in Tampa, Florida. And there's different events in LA. I covered some early social club concerts. And then, of course, there was the, it was South by Southwest. And there were, when Thre was nominated for his first Grammy, he wanted to appear at South by Southwest just as like not quote on a Christian stage, but just like on a secular hip hop stage. So a ton of artists went to South by Southwest. I'd have to look up the year. That probably was like 2011, 2012, I think, probably 2012-ish. And so we were doing man on the street interviews with Chris. I remember standing on the street corner with Andy Mineo before Andy Mineo broke big, and Chris was just like so excited about Andy and his new, his debut album. And I was like, who is this dude, Andy? And I'm sitting there holding the camera. Anyway, so that's kind of how I got started with Chris. And then he introduced me, so along the lines of, just promoting independent artists, he introduced me to people like V Rose and Spec, who was the producer for Flame. Spec was incredible. Well, he produced Flame and V Rose. I got introduced to Flame. All the Reach Records guys. Just so many people I came to know through Chris. And I'm just completely, eternally grateful for him and those connections. And even Jeremy Rosado, who I helped for basically almost 5 years, wandering the independent wilderness. Chris introduced us, and then I was able to help Jeremy, and then now Jeremy is signed to Capitol. So Chris was just a force on every level, and his influence went way beyond Christian hip hop.
I have a question for Derek or Ange on this. There's a kind of sounds like there's just this huge legacy behind Chris. And as we're starting to see like the YouTube era take over, and there's guys like me and Mitch and Bars and Beats and B plus, there's more of us popping up. What could we learn from somebody like Chris to help continue his legacy and really like spread the gospel through this medium that we love as much as we do?
Yeah, I have two things that immediately came to mind. I would say, one, be consistent. Chris was incredibly consistent. He was so faithful to always seeing his shows through. Whatever he had on his plate that week, he was going to do, no matter what. I don't think I ever saw him miss a show. So we did Rapzilla together for a time as well, which was really fun. So he was always just on it, and always demand that level of excellence in that consistency from yourself, because Chris just never settled when it came to his product. He was very diligent with how his voice sounded, how everything sounded produced and put together. I would say that consistency and excellence in your consistency. And then also, I think Chris, he always talked about like his faith, but he never felt the need to really go super in depth on the air or try to convince somebody, because he knew that the music was what was going to compel people at the end of the day. So I think like that's something you could do as well, is just kind of like let the music do its thing. And then if you have something that spoke to you from the music, then go from there, rather than feeling like Chris, whenever I'd be like, okay, we're going to talk about something spiritual right now, he always was like, I don't know. He didn't like to be put on the spot, but he always had spiritual revelations. He always had these thoughts, but he wasn't like, oh, let's like do a spiritual break. Let's talk about God right now. It was never like that for him. It was just a natural outpouring of, whenever he would talk about God on the air, it was because it was spontaneous. It was never planned. And I think that's a beautiful thing. It shows you that he didn't have to plan to talk about
more spirit led.
Yes, 100%. So I think something like that could be pretty cool too.
Cool.
Yeah. And I would add, kind of what you guys already hit on, which was Chris was a big tent guy. Like if you were kind of, even somewhat friendly to him, he would just welcome you, give you a big hug, and like he would give you a platform, Mm-hmm. And if he liked your music, like he would play it. He doesn't care if you had one follower, like he was like, this is dope. And
Yes.
so many artists started that way with Chris, you know. And what's kind of fun is there's a video I like to show my music business students, and because I teach at I taught at Natalie Grant's university here in Seattle, Northwest University, music business for 10 years. And Gary Vaynerchuk, who's the internet marketing guru, he has a video out. You can look it up on YouTube. It's called "One is Greater Than Zero." And basically Gary is like, hey, you know what? If some show invites you on and they have, 2 followers, like, go on it. Like, that's how you get followers. Like, you got to, everybody starts somewhere. And Chris was very well aware of that. And he was very well aware of how crucial that was for lifting Christian hip hop up, this kind of small genre, rewind prior to even Lecrae. Like, he was really, really well aware of that, and he helped create that groundswell of support.
Yeah, man. Hey, the things I heard there is like, that's why Chris came and hung out with us on our show. And then I think Ange is like specifically trying to tell us something, Swiss, since we're taking next week off from the show.
Yeah.
Consistency.
I'm taking
Now I
off
don't know how
next
to
week
feel
because
about
I
it.
have church group though. Every first Monday.
Well,
I got-
I'm helping out with our school football game, so it is what it is. But hey, I want to give a shout out to the people hanging out with us in the chat. Orlando, Christy, who else have I seen in there?
Hey, shout out
Heidi,
Christy. She's a big supporter.
She
in the
is.
comments. Like, I always see her on Twitter. She's always such an encouragement. Thank you for watching.
We love Christy.
100%. And shout out to KD. Hey, say something so everyone can be impressed with your voice, and then we can get back to the conversation.
Bro, come on, man. You know you're wrong for that.
Boom! I told you. That's enough. That's just stop right
Party
there.
to the
You're done.
party, man. But good evening, man. Glad to have everybody on.
Yeah, man. We're glad you're here. We're glad you're here. So, Derek was talking about just Chris's heart for independent artists, and Thre, I know you were talking about having some interaction with him, man. Like what did Chris Chicago mean to someone like you who is an independent artist? I mean, I know you're with History and everything at this point, but out here, trying to make your way throughout, the Christian hip hop wasteland. I don't know. I feel like that's the right term after this past week. So
Beautiful term. For me, salute to my Barry White brother from Chicago, KD. No, but for me, man, I think Chris is like the epitome of chances. You know what I'm saying? He just looked out for you. My music showed up in places I didn't expect because he was showing love to it. Right, people would just send it to me. Hey, your music, and this probably around the time he was with Rapzilla. He playing music, and those was like highlights of your career. Like when Chris Chicago was playing your music. I would say one of the things that sticks out for me as I'm hearing the stories and seeing the posts is his reputation. Right, like the Bible is flooded with quotes, and I mean specifically Proverbs telling us that a great name is to be more desired than great wealth, right? And it appears like for me that's what I would take away, that not just when I'm gone, but while I'm here, like that people will speak well of me in the way that they're speaking well of Chris. And so just that example that he left behind, one who shared the gospel, loved God's people, and rep the Lord well. So,
yeah, for the longest time too. Just
so,
is it okay if I go?
yeah, you got it. Go.
So one of the things that Chris and I were really trying to work on was trying to bridge the gap between what CCM is, contemporary Christian music, and all the big radio stations that just, play the normal, CCM that we all know and love, or not. And we were trying to see if we could like bridge the gap by getting some, urban music sound into those playlists. And so we did a side experiment in addition to launching the Jam the Hype 24/7 stream. We did a little side experiment that we called Jam the City. And I had asked Chris, I said, Chris, could we make a Christian station sound like a Kiss FM in a major, market like LA or Chicago or Miami? He's like, yeah, let me work on that. And so we put together a little station that we had for like 2 or 3 years, I think, a couple of years. And we blended Christian hip hop, some R&B, and rock and different things together. And that had never been done before. And I remember when I heard it for the first time from Chris, after I just gave him that brief description, I was like, dude, you killed the playlist. Like, this is the way Christian music should sound in major markets. Mm-hmm. And so what kind of happened, it gets into all kinds of stuff that I could go on forever about. But he essentially, when he went to NGen, he took some of those ideas with him and planted them at NGen. And so NGen and all these other CHR, what we call contemporary hit radio stations now, these little, what I guess I call them little brother, little sister stations that these big stations have, like NGen, they're doing it. And Chris paved the way for that. And so I see that as very exciting because now, on NGen, you hear Lecrae right alongside like Sanctus Real or something like that, and that had never been done before. Yeah.
Love it, man. Love it. So, I mean, here's the thing. I think what we've seen as far as like the outpouring from the CHH community over the past week, one, it's been inspiring to me to see the amount of love that's been shown. Hopefully, you guys have felt that. My thing is I want to make sure that the community doesn't let, Chris fade into the background at some point here. What do you guys hope to see as we keep moving forward as far as how we honor Chris moving forward, just as a body of people? You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, I can speak on that. I think Derek said it really well, that Chris has done so many things that are not even fully recognized in terms of like his programming. I don't think people really understood how good he was at creating this incredible dynamic playlist, and creating and curating and thinking about tempo and thinking like, I programmed when I first moved here to Canada. I got to do some like music programming for the first time. And I was so grateful that I got to watch someone like him and how his mind worked. He really saw the playlist as something to live in. He listened to it all the time. It was like on in his house, on in his car. He lived it. And so, yeah, I think that the way we can honor Chris, because I know that dude, he loved attention, what we all do in radio. Mm-hmm. But I think he would really appreciate the respect, like, for what he did. Because, yeah, I think some people have been saying things like, oh, Chris didn't get he needed to get the love and stuff before he passed. He knew he was loved, for sure. But I think he'd always appreciate just all the work he put in over like 20 years being respected and appreciated. Who wouldn't, who wouldn't? So I think for me personally, I'm always going to give credit to Chris for like the rest of my life. When there's something that I feel like he contributed to, which is pretty much every aspect of my professional life, from the excellence I demand from myself, as well the example he set. He was just so good on the air. One of the best jocks I've ever had the privilege of being in a room with. He was so good. You'd be like on the edge of your seat, like, what are you saying? This is if you've never heard Chris on, not even like, it was cool to work with him on NGen, because as much as I love hearing his like, here's this song and like him just going off script was so entertaining. I highly recommend if you ever get a chance to hear, any of the old work that we've done. It's on Spotify and it's so fun to listen to. His mind was just so interesting. So all that to say, I'm personally going to give credit to Chris. And I think that's something that if artists have been touched by him, like Ty Braslow today released a song about Chris. If radio people, music business people have been influenced by him, touched by him, like say that, acknowledge that, because I think we all need to give credit to the people, like our heroes, the people that paved the way for us. And yeah, he's that for me. I didn't really realize until he passed, because he was my friend first and foremost, but he was also my like mentor. Like he showed me so many things as someone who's been so far ahead of me. He never treated me that way though. Like he always just treated me like, this is my little sis, like we're buddies, like let's kill this together. He never patronized me. But now I realize like there was definitely a huge gap in our experiences. So I'm very grateful.
It's awesome.
And
You got me
Derek,
wanting to check that out tonight now.
I
Get on that Spotify.
Well, he was oh man, I wish I could go back in time now. I was tweeting about it, but NGen was playing for the last 2 nights all these breaks from our past like shows. I had no idea that they had unearthed audio. So shout out to Andre at NGen who works there and had this incredible archive of breaks like back from 2017 that he just pulled and put on the air, and they are so entertaining, like just crazy stuff that we did. And I'm so proud of the show that we built in Houston. Like people still to this day talk about it, and that's because of Chris being so, I mean, he was designed, built, born to be on the radio, and he was in his element. I would say, I mean, I've heard his past work, but he was always meant to be on a major market radio station, building that kind of huge following. Like he was incredible, just in his bag. So yeah, if you didn't get a chance to hear that, Thursday Throwdown was so much fun. It was legendary. There's just so many good moments.
Yeah. And hey, if you guys haven't done this so far, I think another thing is, I mean, I know that they're probably, still finding their way and figuring out what, life looks like in the days ahead. But I mean, get in and support SoFlo too. I mean, like get behind what's going on there, because that's legacy for Chris Chicago as well. Derek, did you want to jump in on what you hope to see in general?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of people may wonder, kind of like what happened to Jam the Hype? How come that's not still going? So essentially at the beginning of the pandemic, I was trying to turn the keys over to Jam the Hype to a younger, urban set of leaders. And I had brought us under a nonprofit called Urban Youth Workers Institute in Los Angeles. They were amazing to us for the better part of 5 years. And we put on a Jam the Hype festival at Biola University and Azusa Pacific University for 5 years in a row, with like 30 artists performing every summer. And we had 1,500 urban youth pastors in attendance. And just incredible partnership with urban youth workers. And so I was trying to leaders who do lead it. And so one of those people was George Moss.
I think you're covering your mic, Derek. You're covering your mic. Can you guys hear him?
Hey, Derek, we're having a hard time hearing you, bud. I don't know if you can hear us.
I think he's like totally off.
I can sort of hear him, but
Come back to us.
Hey, you should have control to mute him though.
yeah.
So I think he's just in another realm right
you-
now.
He's
still going.
I hope maybe that'll signal it. I'm sorry, Derek.
Sorry, Derek.
Yeah. we lost your audio, man. But hey, the point is, Chris Chicago. You know, Ange said it earlier, and you know about that term legend, and I don't. I have a hard time thinking of another way to even explain it. I don't know what other word to put with him. You know, whenever I think of Chris Chicago, that's what I think about, right? Because like I said, I think him along with a couple other individuals, you know, really paved the way for a whole lot of people, man. And so while it's been a hard week, but I also know that I think there's good days ahead for CHH, and I think that Chris would be really happy with that. And you know, one thing I took away, Ange, from the interview that we got to do with him too, is like while he had this amazing attitude and energy all the time, right? He also wasn't afraid to kind of tell people what was what at the same time, but doing it in a way where you couldn't be mad at him. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
like he had some words for artists on our interview. I think they
Oh
were
man, I
very
can only
wise, but
imagine. He's
I
probably
think
like,
they were great.
your cover art sucks, your name sucks, change it, it's terrible. Like he would just tell you the truth. That way you knew when he was telling you you were doing well that he actually meant it. He would tell you the truth.
Yeah. So I mean, you
which
know,
is
and I think
very
that's-
needed in our space.
It really is.
Some people are too nice in our space, I think.
Yeah,
Well,
he was nice and gracious, but he would just be like, I know exactly what you're talking about. As soon as you said that, I was like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but it was, you know, it was an example that he was setting for those of us on this side of stuff, right? That like, hey, you can give an honest critique that is hopefully helpful, you know, without just having to smile and nod and make people feel great if it, you know, if they really do need to do better, which I think we see a lot, especially when you're talking about working regularly with independent artists. So, I mean, I look at that just like, hey, think of what he was teaching us, let alone what he was teaching to artists. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yes.
that's something that you know, like I said, I feel like I've kind of tucked it away, and I'll be able to just always pull that back, you know, whenever I need it. But yeah, man. So, Ange, I want to give you and Derek. Do we have you back? Maybe.
Yeah, we're back. My Bluetooth headphones were taken over in my pocket, so sorry about that.
You're good. Well, I'm gonna give you guys an opportunity just for some final thoughts on Chris, and we're gonna jump in and chat with Thre here for a minute. So, Ange, why don't you go ahead? Whatever you feel like you need to say that you haven't got to say so far.
Final thoughts on Chris. So I think I'll just circle back to kind of what I was saying. Circle back. That's such a pandemic era thing. But I'll touch on what I was saying before about Chris and who he really was. Just, I think a lot of people knew him as the industry legend, the vet. But at the end of the day, Chris was just the biggest, most loving guy. Like, I don't know how to explain it other than he was exactly my story. You get to know him. To know him is to love him. And I really just want to keep the legacy going that he left. He was now looking back and talking with people and really trying to like keep him alive and with me in spirit, encouragement and forgiveness. Those are two things that I saw with him, and peace. Okay, the three things. He had a peace that passed all understanding. I saw so many things going on in his life that he remained completely cool, calm, and collected for, that he had no earthly reason to remain cool and calm and collected for. Like, people were coming against him, and he just felt no need to defend himself because he knew that the Lord would defend him. And just even talking to people now, all of those situations that I saw play out in his life directly have came to an end before God took him. Like, people that had beef with him that should not have, that he was just like, peace-filled about, and I was like, I want to fight these people. They called him and asked for forgiveness before he passed. Like, so many things in Chris's life came full circle before he passed that I learned about now. Like, I learned about just in the last week, and I'm so happy about. So I'll just say that he was someone that had that supernatural peace when there was no earthly reason to. And he also forgave people very well. Like, he did not hold grudges, whereas I would hold grudges for him. I would be like, forget this person. I hate them. I don't like them. They did this to you. And he'd just be like, he'd let it go. He forgave people. It was wild. It was really cool to see. And then his encouragement, like you said with your show, if Chris told you that you could do something, you really believed that you could and that you were good. And I think I hold a lot of that still. I think I never before started to feel like, you don't know who I am. But Chris made me feel like everyone should know who I am because I'm worth something. Like, he honestly made me feel that way. And I can't even tell you what like that kind of confidence means to me, because I don't know. I think we're all pretty much our worst enemies and we're insecure. But when you have someone like Chris in your life that's like, no, you're amazing. Like, I believe in you. I see you. Dude, you're like, okay, I guess I am okay, you know? And those are the three things that I will always remember Chris for, and I will hold with me.
Praise God.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Hey, and it does not have to be the final thoughts. The door is always open for you to come back and talk about Chris anytime. Okay, so
okay, I will.
Hey, Derek, what do you want to say as we get ready to transition here?
Well, okay, so a couple fun things. So number one, people have to understand that Chris's favorite band was Creed. And so if you knew him really well, he would finally fess up that was his favorite band. And I'll always keep that with me. But yeah, just as I was talking about before, and he would laugh at me with this analogy, but like, you know, Chris always believed in the little guy. And we all need that in our lives. Like, you know, if there's somebody who comes knocking on your door who needs help, like, help them, you know? And Chris was always that kind of person. I kind of think of it as like Incrediboy, you know, and Incredibles, you know, I want to be your ward. And Mr. Incredible's like, oh, get out of here, kid, you know? And Chris was not like that. You know, Chris knew that you could gather up a bunch of Incrediboys and change the world. And
so true. Yeah. Oh, that's so well said. That's so well said. He saw potential. I think that's like a really perfect way to say it, that if he saw the potential and you're like, okay, let's go, because you've seen potential in all these people and they've gone on to just be amazing. So well said.
Love it. Yeah, man. Well, we're going to jump into talking to Thre for just a second here. Before we do, again, shout out to everyone hanging out in the comments. If you haven't left a comment, make sure you do that. And if you haven't, make sure you sign up for our newsletter over at Substack. You see it there in the top corner of the screen, FiveTwentyClub.com/Substack will get you signed up. It is free. If you like what we're doing, though, and you want to put a little something back in, if you're blessed by any of this, man, sign up as a premium member. It's just $5. You'll become a producer of the show, and it'll go a long way to helping us, you know, be able to keep on doing some of this stuff and potentially do it better. I don't know. I mean, some of us, we're rocking with as much skill as we have at this point, so we do what we do. But again, FiveTwentyClub.com/Substack gets you signed up. And if you are already a member, then you saw this hit your inbox last Thursday, man. My guy KD, who I'm going to turn it over to, did an awesome write-up on Thre's new album, Like It or Love It. We're going to talk about that for just a minute. KD, take over, man. Go ahead and introduce your guy and get this whole thing rolling, man.
No, I appreciate it. Super happy to have him on, especially on the back end of this conversation, and just you know, have an opportunity to talk about independent artistry and all of that good stuff. And again, just shout out to Derek and Ange hanging out with us tonight. But my homeboy Thre, formerly known as Brother Thre, hailing from Chicago's South Side. And just a staple. A lot of you guys know him. Maybe you don't. you're familiar with him, familiar with his catalog. If you kept up with Infantry at all, and those guys, Thre became a part of that collective, and now he's again with History Music Group. Shout out to D Black and all of those guys. But Thre, come on in, bro, and take a bow, man, real quick, man, because you just dropped a very dope body of work. And we really want to give you the opportunity, man, to just kind of share that with our audience, man, and maybe pull people into what you got going on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. And appreciate the intro, bro. That was pretty dope. Yeah, so the album Like It or Love It just released September 27th. It's been a while since a full-length project. My last one was 2020 with Infantry. After that dissolved, I just took a break, kind of focused in on ministry, and man, just been moving according to the pace the Lord would have me to move. I've never been a type to just do music because I had the ability to, but I always want to have something to say when I got the people ears. And so at this time, I believe the people are listening and the Lord is speaking. So here we are, Like It or Love It.
Dope combination. So I know some of the guys might have questions, man, but I'll ask you just because of our history. And when we met a lot of years ago, you were already an independent artist like myself. We met out at an event and just kind of connected, and we kind of been tied together, man, since then. Talk about some of the pluses and the minuses, man, because we still kind of like present day. We know that Infantry is no longer a thing, but there are still pockets of collaborative groups that are out within the space. You got the Indie Tribes, you got God Over Money Camp, you got a lot of other different groups and different. So talk about the difference between working as an independent artist versus being a part of like a label or a collaborative group.
Yeah, man. I think the obvious thing is you're alone. You're doing everything alone, right? From top to bottom. You seeking out producers, and if you are very talented, you're producing your own music. If you got a little more talent, you're writing your own music, recording your own music, mixing and mastering, promoting, all these different things just alone. And even if you're outsourcing those things by yourself, it can weigh on you. It's the reason the Lord has placed people in certain positions to be of help, because that burden is heavy. For me, it's been a blessing to find myself a part of teams or collectives that kind of carry some of that weight. Whether it's me just getting sent a plethora of beats, it's very helpful for me because I'm not listening to tracks 24/7. I'll listen to the ones that come to me purposely, but I'm not seeking any of them out. Like my homie Jeremiah Blodgen, he can sit and just listen to 1,000,000 beats and be like, yeah, I want 100 of them. I'm like, give me this one. You know what I'm saying? So things like that, creatively, just bouncing ideas off of people, just having those people that you can lean on in those times, man, it's been a blessing for me. So it's a yeah, nay, either way, but I think it's also depicted upon what the person feel they need, what the artist feel they need, right? Some people just like, yo, I'm better alone. Others is like, I'm better together, right? When we working together, I'm better. I thrive in community. I think that's how the Lord created us, right? To be amongst community. I don't think it's any different when it comes to the music industry.
Facts.
Thre, for the people watching right now who may not have heard of you or are not aware of this album, man, how would you preface the album, like theme wise? And then just a question I like to ask guys is like, man, what were you going through when you were creating the album? Was there a specific scripture that was inspiring this or something going on in your life? Like, how were you processing your faith as you came into this new project?
Yeah. So usually I'm a conceptual type dude when I'm approaching music. This wasn't the case. Like I said, I've been blacked out on the scene for a minute. So I wanted to come back and kind of regain the trust of the people. And so I was just releasing singles, right? And just kind of regaining the ear, the trust before I gave the full-length album. And so for me, Like It or Love It, it wasn't a particular scripture, but it was heavy on the Lord's love, right? Just thematically through this particular album, it's a lot of like it's a record called No Hero, right? And just speaking of men in spaces that are in need of grace, but may feel like, hey, others that's on look into their life is like, man, you're undeserving of it. And so they're trying to do some things in one way, maybe saving their own life, but they're not a hero. But right after that record comes The Blood, the true hero, right? And it just speaks about the Lord love. And like from that, you got Like It or Love It and I Won't Break Your Heart. For me, it was just heavy on the Lord's love. And so personally in my life, that's what I was feeling at the time, just undeserving times in my life. Like, yo, I don't deserve the Lord's love. I don't deserve to be counted among the body of Christ in this moment. I know what I'm going through. I know what I'm struggling with. And yet the Lord still says like, yo, I have need of you. I want to use you. I want to bless you. I want you to carry this message. I want you to give this message. And so, yeah, that's my hope, that people would walk away from listening to this album like, yo, Like It or Love It, the Lord loves you.
That's funny, man. I had that conversation with my barber this weekend. He's an atheist, and we were talking about. I just asked him, like, man, what do you think about Jesus, though? Because we were talking about. I was making a joke about how if I die, and my wife brings another man into heaven, like I'm gonna kick him out. Like it was just a joke, And so I told that to my barber. He's like, "You're petty." And I was like, "When it comes to another man and my wife, you're dang right I'm petty." And so,
let him in, Lord.
So I made a joke, and he's like, "Yeah, well, I won't be in heaven because I don't believe in heaven." I was like, "Well, who do you think Jesus is?" And we've had several conversations. He's my barber for a while, but I did tell him, I was like, "Hey, man. Whether you believe in him or not, he loves you and he's chasing after you." And like that's how I ended the conversation. So I like that.
Truth. Now let me piggyback on something real quick. And then Eric, I know you might have a question or two. So and I'm gonna go ahead and stir the pot a little bit. Because we got like several chats with several different people going on. And I talked about people being called to do this. And I got pushback on that. And Swiss, Eric, I don't know how y'all feel about it, but the statement was that nobody is called to do music. Nobody's called to do this. This isn't a calling. You know what I'm saying? And I find that ironic. And the reason that I'm mentioning it, and I'm kind of using what you said as a segue into this, is because you said, okay, Lord, what message is it that you would have me to relay to your people?
Yeah.
Music is a vehicle of ministry for us in the body of Christ. And this is something that we have to make sure that we understand, which is why I'm always going to advocate for individuals who take on the challenge of presenting a message from the Lord. It should be from the Lord if you're a saint of God. To the people, it should be ministry. We don't do this just to entertain. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you tell me, bro, do you feel as though individuals can be called to this? Because we know the marketplace is super saturated, right? And there's a lot of voices. Even Paul talked about it. It's a lot of voices. There's a lot of sounds. How are you able to distinguish one from the other? What do you think when we talk about the difference between people who are called to do this versus people who maybe are just capable of it and are doing it because they can do it instead of being commissioned and actually sent into this particular vineyard to work?
Yeah. No, man, that's a good question. I would start off, my first thought is that our first calling is God calls us to himself, right? And that's us in totality, like the whole us. And if music is a part of you in which he's called, then that gift that he's given you is to be used for his glory. And so I never really looked at it in a way that you're saying, like, man, the Lord has called me to this, though I know I have said it in my mind, like, this is my calling. Like we just saying it in passing, this is my calling. But I believe that I have a responsibility to steward what he's given me well. And if you're called to something, you're not ruling over that. You're not, you're merely a steward to what he called you to, right? And so if I'm stewarding what I'm doing well as a steward, then I feel called to it. I have a burden for it. People are sent, right? People go because they feel led, they feel called. The Lord is pulling them. And then I would agree with you with the calling, because I believe some people are sent into this space to cause confusion, to be disruptive. Their motives and intents are not pure. They didn't make it in secular music, so they came over here because they felt the bag would be easier to get, because we may be more gullible as a community. Like, oh, he's talented. Oh, he was signed with this person back then, and the Lord saved him. Let's give him a platform. And so, yeah, you better hit the Lord.
Man,
I believe the call, and if you answer that call, and be a great steward of what he's giving you to do.
man,
Well said.
yeah. Be breezy.
E breezy on that 10-second delay.
Man, oh,
Well,
was it
I
on
was
the tape?
trying to type and read things and all this stuff, man. I'm sorry. I apologize. So here's my question, Thre. You and D, which one's the better rapper?
Woo.
Say, me and KD. KD's
You
the
and D,
better
man,
rapper.
come on.
Nah, he
no,
said
D.
D, bro. Nah, yo, he'll label
Come
me.
on, man.
Oh, you talking about D Black?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Come
Oh,
on.
who's the better
I'm
rapper?
trying. I'm here for all the CHH beef. So let's go.
I feel you.
Eric,
you
stop
go
it.
get it. You go get it right here. You finna get it right here. I ain't ducking no questions. You want to know who's better? Go listen to the
Right? No, but hey, serious. Hey, listen, man. All I can say is, like, people need to go listen to the album. It's fantastic. If like, especially if you're like us, where you came up with that golden era and you like lyricism, this is an album for you, man. Like, you gotta go listen. Like, dude, that track with Gemstones is ridiculous. I'm just gonna say, and go check out the video. The video's cool too. So
Facts. Video was fire. Yeah.
Appreciate
Ooh,
that.
I didn't see the video.
Oh, you gotta check
dude,
the video.
You know I'm gonna check that out.
It's not. I remember Good Bad, right? Or Good Bads, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
yeah, man. Hey, talk about that record. I'm interested in like the stories behind particular records, man. Talk a little bit just about that record.
Yeah, man. So Stones and I have collaborated multiple times, but only one record came out, right? So we've collaborated quite a few times, and it was just that time again. And for me, or for us, I believe it's just really the relationship behind it, right? I've known him for some years now, and we've been in each other's life in an intimate way outside of music. And I believe that's just being in close proximity in the Lord's doing. And so when it was time to do this record, I never reach out to Stones. Stones is always coming to me like, yo, Thre, if ever you need me, it's time, just let me know. And so I always just put it in my back pocket, like, oh, I'm gonna play that card when it's time to play it. So yeah, man, I just reached out, said it's time. We got together and we just was playing beats. And one thing I've learned with working with Stones, you don't send him a song that's halfway done already. Like, you don't send him a hook, a verse, and be like, yo, jump on it, because you're setting yourself up for failure. Because he's known to kill any and everybody on the track when he jumps on. And so you build from scratch with that man, because when you build from scratch, he has a care for the song in its totality. He's like, I'm concerned about the betterment of this record. And so we just started from scratch, and we just threw out ideas out. And man, we wanted to do something different. We got a song called Hallelujah that we released maybe like 2016, 2015. And we was gonna come back that same way, because we know like people love that record, and it was us doing the style, what they call double time. But we was like, man, let's just go a whole different direction. We actually saw the video before we wrote the song. We talked about the video first, then we wrote the song. The hook came last. We just pieced it together, man, and it took maybe a couple months, just given our time and scheduling. But when it was done, we knew, like, yeah, this is it. We got something special.
Shout out to Stones too, man.
That's
Who
what's up,
sounded
man.
like
That's
young
what's up.
Arkels on the
Right, dirty draws and all, man.
Bro, it's so many variations. It's so many variations of that hook, and it's funny that we landed on dirty draws because it was so much. It was way more better things we could have said, but we like, let's just be real. Let's be real. So
that's funny, man. All right, dude. So elevator pitch, man. Why do people need to go rock with the album right now? And what do you hope that they take away from it?
Yeah, man. I want you to rock with the album because I believe you'll be fed by it. Not so much that I need you to listen to it, that I did it for clout, for numbers, to gain fans. Whatever the Lord gonna do with it, he gonna do with it, and I'm comfortable with that. This is, again, me just being a steward with my gift. So I want you to come to it looking to get something from it. You hit play, listen. Don't hit play and be talking around the record. Because if you're in the car with me listening to music and you start talking, I'm gonna rewind the song. That's just how I do. I'm rewinding the song, I'm starting it over. And so I hope you take it as serious as I do when you sit down and listen with it. Give it your attention, be fed by it. And I want you to walk away with a desire to share it with someone else. I put a lot into my music lyrically. I want it to be thought-provoking. If I got your ear, I want to be talking about something, so I'm not leaving you with just you banging your head. And those records can come, and they do, but even in those type of records, I still want to feed you. And so come with a plate, come with a fork, bring your napkin, eat it up, let it digest, come back to it.
Love it.
Yeah,
dope.
There it is. Dude, hey, it's the same thing I said earlier. I'm gonna say to you, man, the door is open. Slide through, hang out with us anytime, man. We'll find time to chop it up some more, and catch up and see how stuff has been progressing over time. You know what I'm saying? So, but before we get out of here, man, let them know, like, how do they tap in? How do they follow, support all the
Indeed. Let me say this before I go there. Thank you to everyone who purchased the album, who downloaded, who streamed, shared. The album did chart. It hit 56 on the top 200 hip hop charts.
Nice.
And that's with no major promotion. Shout out to His Story Music Group, D Black, the whole team over there. And yeah, man, 773, 77 THRE. That's on everything. Follow me, I follow back. We connect. I got a show coming up. If you're in Chicago, October 12th, 6154 South Woodline, Chicago, Illinois, 6 to 8 p.m. It's a free show. I got Jeremiah Bligent coming out, D Black coming out. I think it'll be Jeremiah's first time in Chicago performing. And so, man, come out, get blessed with a show, and see me perform this album live.
Shout out to Superfan Shay in the chats.
Yes. Shout out to Shay. He's at Christchurch, Chicago, man.
Yeah, Christchurch, Chicago.
Yeah.
Salute to Shay, my love bug.
Yeah. KD, you pulling up to the show?
Man, I always support my brother. Like when I say like this is my guy, like this, you know what I'm saying? Like we got history, man. So I got to look out for my brother, man. Like big time.
Indeed, man. Salute to KD. I probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for KD, right? So I appreciate the write up. It was crazy. I reach out to KD every time, like, hey, bro, you got some time? Need you to write up something for me. Listen to this, see what it say to you, and just spill out. I think I wish I would have thought to do some voiceovers with KD on the album, like throughout the album, like after like
next album.
That'll
Make
definitely
it happen.
keep people.
Make it happen. Hey, KD, you got final thoughts, man?
No, man, really just thank you. I'm super late, so I missed a whole lot, but thank everybody for tuning in tonight. It's always a pleasure to hang out on Monday nights, and stir the pot a little bit. And, just to kind of echo what Thre said, hopefully you guys have a lot of good takeaways. I think, though, and just to tie in with the Chris Chicago angle and aspect of it, I think the best way to honor those who have passed, especially those who are passing the Lord, is to continue to live. And so continue to get into the word, stay before the Lord, stay grounded, stay rooted so that you can grow up straight and strong and do your part to make sure that heaven and earth collide. So y'all be safe out.
Yeah, man. Swiss, final thoughts?
You want me to follow that?
I mean,
Oh,
you can
man.
do dude, I'm gonna go after
Can
you.
you just make me
so
go
think
first
about
every
that.
time? Nah, man.
Dude,
I'm super.
I'm about to say something ridiculous, probably.
Okay, good. No, it was an interesting conversation to hear Chris's legacy and the way, kind of the full circle of today's show, in that he was constantly promoting independent artists, whether they had one follower or thousands, and then to get to talk with Thre about his coming back and like building up his repertoire again with the singles and getting stuff out. And I've had that He's Been Good song going. That beat is nasty too. It gives me very Ninth Wonder vibes, which like Little Brother era Ninth Wonder though, like not now.
Tone Jones is a beast.
So I love the samples on those. That was a fire record. But so yeah, just thinking about like for us, like how do we continue that legacy that Chris had, and it's consistently building up the body, bringing in artists every time that we get a chance that we can expose more people to the music we love, that sheds light to the gospel.
Yeah, man, love it. Shout out to all of our guests here tonight: Lil Ange, Derek Heim, Thre, my guys KD and Swiss again, man. Yo, hey, don't forget about Chris Chicago, man. We got a responsibility, man, to keep that man's legacy and his story alive, man, because he did so much for this community. So now it's on us, man. But it's okay if we're a little jealous of him too right now, because man, he's hanging out with Jesus. You know what I'm saying? Like that's something to be jealous of. I'm just gonna throw that out there. So man, okay. So again, if you haven't, sign up for the newsletter over at Substack, FiveTwentyClub.com/Substack. Join us by subscribing here on YouTube. Follow the playlist, add it to your library, YouTube and YouTube Music. Man, y'all have shown out. We had a goal of 520 subscribers. We are past that now, so we appreciate that, and we just want to keep growing this little community of people, man, and interacting with y'all. I wish I had something really inspiring and that I said it in a way that made everyone swoon like KD, but I don't. So I'm just going to leave you with this. Man. You know what it is. We're going into October tomorrow, right? We're getting close to that time of the year. So make sure you registered and do exactly what P. Diddy told us and go rock the vote, okay? So yeah, you guys can make those faces whatever y'all want, okay? But y'all know what it is,
What
man.
pitch was that?
It's 520 Collective, FiveTwenty iXc, indie Christian culture. You already know what it is. We will see you not next week.